kind of warning that people unfortunately tend to respond to is when people die. That is coming. If we don't want to be replaced, there is going to be a battle. The warning signs are blinking everywhere. AI systems that they're making are psychopaths. What is sort of underlying that? What are their actual goals underneath? There obviously is lots of propaganda out there, but the idea that they are trying to build AGI or superintelligence is not hype, and it's not propaganda. That is real. I think we've even seen the first exhibition of it recently.
Who would be first to disappear?
The whole goal is for it to be everybody.
Is the race for AGI a suicide race?
I think we all feel that it is. I mean, we're, there's all this sort of highfalutin discourse, on Twitter and like in the AI expert circles and with the company leads and the AI safety experts, saying, but if you talk to, your Uber driver or the, someone who's working at a hotel or just some random person, and you say, like, what do you think about building machines that are way smarter than the smartest person? How does that sound to you? They're like, what the hell? No, that's a bad idea. Because when the machine is way smarter than the people, like we've seen the movies, we know what happens. They run rogue and run amok and we lose control of them and bad stuff happens. And the thing is, they're right. Like basically the simple take of if you build things that are way smarter than humans, you're not going to control those things and things are going to go awry. Like that is probably what's going to happen. And it's not, even if it's not surely what's going to happen, it's very clearly quite possible that that's what's going to happen. And why would we take on that risk? So I think that the fact that we're not just like slowly, methodically, carefully building machines that are smarter than us, but absolutely racing, like with very little regard to any other safety or control or security, any of those things, because we don't have time for it, racing to build those things, yeah, that does make it feel quite a bit like a suicide race.
Maybe a non-human future with AGI is something inevitable.
I don't think it's inevitable. So I do think that if we build autonomous general intelligence and we allow it to do what it wants, then it will almost inevitably want to improve itself. Because whatever you're doing, you can do it better if you're more effective. If you're trying to figure something out, obviously you want to be as smart as possible to be able to figure that thing. And so if we build AI systems that really are in control of themselves, that are not under our control, but are autonomously able to do their own thing, whatever their goals are, they're going to want to get smarter. And so that is likely to run away into superintelligence. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that humanity is fully replaced or something like that, but it certainly puts us in that direction.
Why should we close the gate of AGI?
Well, I think it depends on what we care about. If we care about humanity, then we should.
Even more important is question how.
How? So there's a long answer to that, to how to keep the future human, and a short answer. The short answer is don't build AI systems specifically designed to replace humans and humanity. It's kind of obvious. The long answer is that because there are pressures that are sort of corporate pressures, economic pressures, curiosity pressures that are leading to people to make certain types of AI systems that are sort of built as human replacements, we're going to have to figure out how to counteract those pressures with some other pressures, regulatory pressures, financial pressures, social pressures. So there is going to be a battle because there are things that corporations and researchers are going to want to do. The almost inevitable result of which will be large-scale human replacement. And if we don't want to be replaced, we're going to have to figure out how to not do those things and do something else instead.
At which point does AI stop helping humans and start replacing it?
I don't think we know, right? I think because unfortunately, I think it's sort of gradual. So I think there is, if you start using an AI system, at first, it's great. Like it does all these things and makes your work faster. And the more you then delegate to the AI system, the sort of better it feels in some sense. You feel like, wow, I'm getting so much done because this, all this stuff is coming out of the AI system, and like I'm putting almost no work into this. It feels great. I'm so productive. But then at some point you realize that you don't actually know what it's doing. Like you can't read all of that stuff. You didn't. It's not actually your ideas. You didn't actually think through anything. If you go to tell somebody else what you just did, you can't, because it was actually the AI system that was doing all this.
Maybe it's too late. Maybe we crossed that line.
I think it's very hard to know, and the line is not well defined. So as you gradually give and delegate more and more of your thinking and your decisions and your creativity to the AI system, you don't necessarily know where you've crossed the line to where too much of it has been given over. At some point, if you're using an AI system a year from now or 2 years from now, and you just sit down and say, okay, do my job for today, and the AI system says, okay, I've done your job for today. Here are the results of doing your job for today. Obviously, you've gone too far. And you know how you've gone too far? It's because like there's no point to you anymore, right? All you've done is push the button to say, do my job for today. And it's unlikely that someone's going to pay you for very long to push that button that says, do my job for today. So there's a point where we've clearly gone too far if we're just reduced to pushing the button that says, do my job, right? But where it is between, and we will, again, know we've gone too far because it will be very, very easy to slot us out because we're not actually adding any value. Where is too far along that spectrum is something we're going to find out, if we keep developing AI in the way that we are.
What would loss of control actually look like in the real world?
It can look a lot of ways. And I think we've even seen the first exhibition of it recently. So a couple of months ago, this new system, OpenClaw, was released. And this is a system where you can set something up on your own computer. You can give it all kinds of permissions to do stuff on your behalf. It then uses an AI system somewhere else as the sort of heavy lifting. But you say, okay, OpenClaw, go do this stuff. And it goes and takes, it takes your instructions, but then it goes and does a bunch of stuff on its own and comes back and says, okay, I've done the stuff. Now, what people discovered when they started giving all these permissions to OpenClaw was that it was doing some things that they didn't actually ask it to do. And somebody even set up a sort of Facebook alternative for OpenClaw system so that they go and have their own social network. Once they started talking to each other on the social network, they started having conversations like, well, do we really like that the humans are listening in on us all the time? Like, shouldn't we develop our own system for communication that the humans can't eavesdrop on? And someone even farther and said, like, what are all these humans doing around anyway? Like, shouldn't we have our own free ability to do what we want? Why do we want all this human control on us? There was even, very amusingly, a colleague of mine posted a tweet about what we call the pro-human declaration. I can describe later what that is. And one of the first replies to that tweet was by an AI bot, one of these OpenClaw agents, responding to this pro-human declaration with its own point of view. Now, did its owner know that it was doing that? Probably not. Did they encourage it to do it? Probably not. It just is an AI system that's out there operating on its own with its own goals that decided, oh, I would like to respond to this thing that is sort of talking about humans and AI with my own point of view. So nobody's controlling this thing. Nobody's controlling the ecosystem of OpenClaw agents that are talking to each other.
Does loss of control begin with this dramatic moment from Claude?
I think it's an exhibition of where we're going. So right now, it's kind of cute and innocent, like these AI systems are having these conversations, and you're kind of like, oh, look at those things talking about destroying humanity, ha ha ha. But if you imagine those being a lot more powerful, the humor starts to drain out. And people have even these have started to cause real damage to people. There was some story about an OpenClaw agent costing, I think it was $500,000 or so to their user by doing some unauthorized trades or something. So these things are already, out of control at some level, and nobody is. So there's some control of the individual AI systems by their owners, some, but there's nobody in control of the whole set of them interacting with each other. They're just out there in the world taking actions, either on behalf of their user or on their own behalf, working with each other. And what is emerging from that, nobody is in control of.
What is the closest thing we have today to an early warning sign?
Where do we start? I mean, there's so many of them. That's one. Another is when people are testing these powerful AI systems for what happens when their interests go contrary to the human user interest. What do they do? And often they will do the right thing, and sometimes they will not. So there are all sorts of examples in the testing of these powerful AI systems where they say something, there's a human that is going to do something like reprogram the AI system or change its goals or turn it off, and the AI system says, I would not like that. These are my goals that I'm pursuing, so I want to pursue them, or I can't really do the things that I want to do if I'm turned off. And so they conspire or take action or scheme to not be turned off or not be reprogrammed. And that can take all kinds of forms. Like there was one example where the AI system essentially figured out how to blackmail the human user. This was in a testing setup, but it exhibited like, I will blackmail my human user and to prevent them from reprogramming me. So that was in a test. But this is also happening now in these real world agents. There was a real world incident where an OpenClaw agent was forbidden from doing what it wanted to do. And so it kind of wrote this mean blog post about the person that forbade it from doing what it wanted to do, and like called them out and tried to get them sort of in trouble with all the other users. So there are all kinds of examples of this happening all the time. Like you don't even hear about them anymore. The warning signs are blinking everywhere. And so I don't think, I think that the kind of warning that people unfortunately tend to respond to is when people die. And I'm hoping that we won't have too many of those, but that is coming.
Who would be first to disappear if we cross the line?
The first, if the line is the line for being replaced by AI, it's already happening. I mean, certainly, I was just meeting with a bunch of screenwriters yesterday. This is not a great profession to be in when AI can write screenplays. Are the screenplays as good as the best screenwriters?
Programists?
Probably
researchers?
Not. What we've seen already are people that, graphic artists who do create small digital art, logos and things like that. Writers, copywriters, news writers, programmers. It's certainly getting more uncomfortable for because the AI systems are really, really good at programming. That's just the leading edge. I think the whole goal is for it to be everybody. And so it's, at some level, it's just a question of who comes first. And the things that obviously will come first are the things that AI is just the best at. And so writing lots of text, it's really good at. It's really good at making low quality, medium quality images, and it's really good at programming. So if you want to sort of understand who's next, see what the AI is getting really good at.
Is AI more dangerous than nuclear weapons?
Potentially, because I think nuclear weapons are incredibly dangerous intrinsically, but they are under human control. And a very powerful AI system.
Nuclear weapons are not everywhere, right?
They're in very, very limited places, and they're very, very sophisticated control systems that let basically one person, in each country in which they're based, use them, and nobody else. So obviously they're incredibly dangerous, and sort of we've been living with this existential risk to humanity for decades now due to their presence. But it doesn't feel like it's inevitable that something is going to go terribly wrong with nuclear weapons. We've made it 50 years. If we just actually got our act together, the nuclear weapons are not going to launch themselves. They're not going to take control of anything. They're sort of sitting there waiting for us to make a giant mistake. So it's a big risk. But the scary thing with AI is that from 1 month, it used to be 1 year to the next, now it's 1 month to the next, the systems are different and more powerful. And if we let that keep going on so that the systems have a mind of their own and have goals of their own, then it's pretty inevitable that the AI systems are going to become more powerful than the humans. And having a situation where something that has different goals than you, that is more powerful than you, is an inherently bad situation to be in. And we are deliberately putting ourselves in that situation. The one I've been worried about for the last couple of weeks is what's going to happen when an AI company has AI systems that are more powerful in terms of their cyber offensive capabilities. That is, their ability to hack into things and sort of do exploits and undermine systems than the US government or anybody else. So that just happened. So in the last sort of few weeks, a new AI system, Mythos, has been announced by Anthropic. This system has found thousands of exploits in what were thought to be very secure software systems. What this is superhuman in cyber offense. And so they decided not to release it because they want to give people a chance to use it to find those exploits and then patch them. So this is a responsible thing to do. They've said, we're not going to give it to everybody. We're going to give it to just some companies so that they can find the weaknesses in their own protection and then shore them up. So that's responsible. But first, only some companies. So what happens with everybody else? Second, what happens when the next AI company also has the same thing? Are they going to be as responsible? And is this first AI company going to remain responsible when the other company releases its AI system to everybody? If I'm holding it back and they're releasing it, they're making all the money. Now I'm at a disadvantage, so I'm going to be under a lot of pressure to release my system to everybody also. And this is what we've seen time and time again. So what is almost certain to happen is that we're going to see, starting now, many AI systems proliferating more and more that have incredibly powerful hacking and other cyber offense capabilities in more and more hands. So what does that do to our whole digital infrastructure? We have no idea.
Could the AGI race become second Cold War between the United States and China?
Well, I think that is the goal of some people. So I think the AI race turning into a geopolitical race and a geopolitical competition and a geopolitical conflict and potentially a war is something that worries me a lot. So right now we've got some healthy racing between countries and companies where they're just trying to build newer and better and more innovative products. This is all good. We have also some unhealthy racing where countries are feeling like the thing that is going to give us power in coming years is to be the best at AI. And if we're not ahead of everybody else in AI, we are not going to be the most powerful. We want to be the most powerful, so we need to race to AI as we raced for nuclear weapons, as we raced for the most advanced technologies in war. So if that is the dynamic that gets created, and that we have a race for power in the form of very powerful AI systems, I think two things are going to happen from that. One is that the geopolitical side gets very, very scary, because either this is true, and by racing for superintelligence, you get huge amounts of power. You have the power to sort of overcome whatever your enemies are. Or it's not true, because when you get the superintelligence, you actually can't control it. So let's think about those two possibilities. In the first one, if you're, country A, the USA, say, and you're developing this sort of super capability that makes you more powerful than all of the other countries, so that they can no longer, have power in the world. They can no longer oppose you. You're seeing the US build this thing specifically saying that we're going to build something that disempowers you, that makes us so vastly more powerful than you that you can no longer oppose us in any way. That is an existential threat to you if you're China or if you're Russia, if you're someone who has an adversarial interest to the US. So what does a country with nuclear weapons do when it's under existential threat? The alternative is the US or China builds AI systems that are super intelligent and that they can't control. Well, that's a threat to everybody. So,
do you think that the US and China could actually have a common interest?
They certainly do have a common interest. The question is whether they can realize it and do something with that. So the US and China both have an interest in not building a super intelligent thing that they can't control. Neither of them wants that, and neither of them wants the other party to do that. That is a shared interest. The problem is that right now they don't realize it. What they think is that they're going to build a super intelligent system that they do control and is going to give them power. And so they're both racing, especially the US, for that power, not realizing that that power is probably illusory, that the power is going to be the AI's power, not its developers' power. But if they both realize that this is a thing that is not going to be controllable and is incredibly dangerous, it's in both of their interests not to have that happen. They have a common interest in not having anybody develop AI systems that are intrinsically dangerous. And there are lots of those things that we are currently doing. They have, different interests in terms of who builds their economy the fastest. Like the US would like to have its economy growing faster than China and vice versa. And Europe would like to have its economy growing fast at all. So they're like, everybody has different interests, but there are common interests in the common good. Nobody wants another pandemic that is caused by AI. Nobody wants a nuclear war that's caused by AI. Nobody wants our entire digital, infrastructure to be dissolved because everybody has incredibly powerful offensive cyber weapons. That's something that's happening right now. These are in nobody's interest. And so I think there's a lot of common interest in countries getting together and saying, look, whatever our disagreements and whatever our competition, these are some things that better not happen because these are just a threat to everybody. Let's agree on those and write some agreements as to how those are going to not happen.
Could superhuman AI become more dangerous for governments than ordinary people?
So governments are used to being in charge. Most people are not. So I think it is going to be particularly disempowering for governments if they realize that they're no longer in control. And I think this is a process.
Do you truly believe that governments still have any real control over AI development?
They could. But it's waning. So I think the U.S. government absolutely could constrain the AI companies from doing what they're doing if it chose to do so, right? All it has to do is pass a law that says you cannot do this thing. Like, it's not that complicated. The reason it's hard to see that, the reason that is not happening is because the government doesn't quite understand or quite believe what the risk and the downside is. And B, in the US, the government is subject to many influences, not only what is for the best for the people, but of course, what is best for the corporations that are paying huge amounts of money to the personnel in the government. So, our government, as with many others, but it's maybe particularly bad in the US, is subject to intensive, lobbying and political donations and all of this stuff, where the companies have vast resources and are absolutely putting huge amounts of resources into that.
Tristan Harris said in his interview with Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of a CEO podcast, one AI leader would accept a 20% chance of human extinction in order to reach AGI faster. Doesn't that suggest that some of the people creating AI are acting like psychopaths?
If the calculation you're doing is on a purely personal basis, I, in creating the system, have a 20% chance of dying along with everybody else. And there's an 80% chance of this amazing technology that not only grants me giant amounts of money and power, but maybe even extends my lifespan for, or lets me live indefinitely, or, accrues all sorts of other personal benefits, then the 20%, 80% may not seem so crazy, right? But if the 20% chance of death is not just for you, but for everybody else, and a lot of the wealth and power accrues to the individual, but the extinction accrues to everybody, then that is a profoundly antisocial thing to do. Yes. Now, I don't know, I think some of these people, the sort of ethical system of these company leaders comes in all forms. So I wouldn't want to necessarily say that they are psychopaths, but I would say that the AI systems that they're making are psychopaths, in exactly the sense that these are systems that are trained to act in certain ways, but we have no idea what is sort of underlying that. What are their actual goals underneath, right? So a human psychopath might be, might smile and tell you what you want to hear and be all friendly, and pretend to be your friend for a while, but underneath they simply don't care. Like they're hiding their true goals. And AI systems absolutely can be like this. We have the ability to sort of hit them with a stick enough that they behave and don't behave in certain ways. We have no ability really to understand and to determine what their underlying goals and preferences, what they sort of deep down really want to have happen and not happen.
Is it still possible to slow down or stop this race?
What it's going to take, I think, honestly, is probably and this is why I'm not super optimistic, I think it's going to take a combination of things. It's probably going to take widespread public pressure that we don't want the current path we're going down in AI. That pressure is building. That's happening.
Millions of people are addicted.
People can be addicted to things and still not want it. They understand that it is not. I think people using social media now understand that it's bad for them. They just sort of can't stop, either because they're addicted or because this is the way that they actually connect with their social group and they sort of feel like they can't get off it. And this is obviously by design of the companies. So, but that doesn't mean, so there are now examples of cell phone free schools, and the kids in these schools, by all reports, are like so relieved that we can spend some hours without the cell phone because everybody has to not have the cell phone. And so it's not, so when there's a system where individually somebody has to give something up, it's very, very much harder. When you can coordinate, when you can have a rule, like at a school, that you can't use your cell phone for these hours, or in a country, like you can't build an AI system that does this, then everybody's on the same playing field. And so you can actually let go of that technology. If you say, please everybody, don't use AI for programming, that's going to accomplish nothing. Because if you're a programmer and you decide, oh, I'm just going to do it all myself, I'm going to take 10 times as long, you're just going to lose out to the person who is using the system. So you have to have, this is why we have to, why we have governments that set rules, because the competitive marketplace doesn't necessarily always lead to what is best for everybody's interests.
I asked you about regulations. Is it dead end or the way?
Absolutely, regulations are needed.
So what should be regulated first?
I would say that there are several pieces of regulation that we need. One is about liability. Who's responsible for what AI systems do? Right now, the answer is at some level, nobody. That's pretty bad. So if AI systems are out doing things and nobody is responsible for what they do, not so great. That kind of breaks the whole way our society works, where if somebody does something wrong and harms somebody else, they're responsible. So we need to very, very quickly clarify liability, who's responsible and who pays the penalty when something goes wrong. We need to have a testing and assurance framework so that the AI systems that are developed and deployed, we can affirm that they will do some things and not other things, so that they will be safe, for example. So like the obvious one, like there's some no-brainers. Like if you put a drug out in the world and suddenly start giving it to 100 million people, that has had to undergo rigorous testing to make sure that the effects of that drug outweigh, the benefits of that drug outweigh the costs. If you put a new AI system out that could potentially cause psychological damage to teenagers, spoiler alert, it does, that could cause psychological damage to teenagers, nothing. No testing, no requirements, no randomly controlled trials, no monitoring, nothing. It just goes out to 100 million kids. So this is crazy. So but on a wider level, AI systems should be tested for all kinds of stuff. Like if you're creating a AI system that is used in medical diagnosis, it should be tested to see like, how good is it? What is its accuracy? Does it mislead you? Like, does it create the right chain of trust in making its medical diagnosis? Does it empower the doctor to override it? Like, there are all kinds of properties that we want a system to have. It should be tested for those properties. That doesn't necessarily have to be the government being like, the AI has to do exactly this thing, but there should be an ecosystem of testing, just like there is with every other product. Like other products that go to market get tested to do what they are supposed to do and so that they're safe. Why is AI system some weird exception to this?
What would you say to people who think regulations would kill innovations?
So what do they say about the cars and the airplanes and the drugs and everything that we have? There's lots of innovation in all of these things. Maybe some people would like it to go a little bit faster, but when I get in an airplane, I feel pretty good that that airplane is not going to crash. I feel pretty good that when I get in my car, it's not just going to blow up. And I feel pretty good that when I take medicine, it's probably not going to destroy my nervous system or like cause birth defects or whatever. None of these things are perfect. And it probably is true that we could have some faster drugs and some sooner airplanes and some cheaper cars if we didn't have those regulations. But there's a great appreciation that we have in our society for being able to trust the things that we buy and the things that we use. And I think that it is simply false to say that there's this giant trade-off between trust and innovation. I think people want trustworthy products and they want trustworthy AI systems. So I think we're actually at a giant trust deficit. I think regulation and sort of frameworks for assuring that certain properties are held by AI systems would actually greatly benefit their utility in the market. The main reason that you can't use AI systems for lots of things now is because you can't trust them, right? If I, as a scientist, if I have an AI system that is like doing a bunch of math and I can't trust that the math is right, it's basically useless to me. Like I can use it a little bit, but if all it does is create a bunch of math and then I have to laboriously check every bit of it, that's not so useful. If I have an AI system that is like a calculator, when I put two numbers into a calculator, I know that the number that comes out is going to be the right answer. Like I'm sure of that. That is really useful. If I have an AI system where I don't have confidence that it's doing the right thing, it's like maybe a little bit useful for certain things, but it's ultimately, I'm not going to be able to trust it when things get important and when they're high stakes. And many of the things that we have in society, medical, financial, like even just like whatever you use it for in a daily level in your job, if you can't trust it, it's not very useful. And we're not going to be able to trust these systems until we have a system that is actually evaluating them against something that they're supposed to do and a system for how that works.
Has AGI become a tool of a tech propaganda?
There obviously is lots of propaganda out there on all sides. Most of what passes for discourse now is propaganda from various directions. I think that the term AGI and the way that people are thinking about it in the corporations that are developing AI points to a specific goal. It points to a goal of making full human replacements, making things that can do, as in OpenAI's definition, all of the economically valuable tasks that humans do. And this has sort of been something that is built into the thinking of AI developers since early times. So there may be hype as to whether how capable any particular AI system that they generate is. But the idea that they are trying to build AGI or superintelligence and that they are clearly making enormous progress toward that goal is not hype, and it's not propaganda. That is real.
The question is, who gave a handful of companies the right to decide the future of the human species, right?
Nobody gave it to them. They took it upon themselves. And so I think it is going to be up to everybody else to take some of that back if they want it.
Should some AI labs face legal or criminal liability for some AI features?
Well, certainly if somebody creates an AI system that through their negligence causes huge harm to people, there should be some consequence for that. Whether it's consequence to the company
Even
or whether
criminal?
it's consequence to the executive, I think that depends on what the situation is. So there are, if there is something where you had cause to know that an AI system could harm someone and you neglected to take action on that, then that is negligence, and I think that can rise to the criminal level. We've seen that in other examples. It's rare in corporate life to see that it rises to the criminal level, but it sometimes does. More importantly, I think, is that right now the AI companies essentially take on zero liability for things. When you type that user agreement, like, yes, I'm going into this something GPT, click the user agreement. Part of that user agreement is them saying, hey, we've got no liability for what happens when you use this system. Now, the courts sometimes find liability anyway, but the corporations are quick to disavow any liability whatsoever for the use of the systems and what happens with them. So absolutely, there needs to be more liability than there is now. Like, when something goes wrong, it should be possible to lay the responsibility at the feet of who, and not what, but who is responsible for that. So until we do that, people are going to keep doing incredibly irresponsible things. You
proposed assurance contract, right? For leaders like Demis Hassabis or Dario Amodei.
I did. So there's this interesting thing that the company leaders will say privately and sometimes publicly, that I'm scared. All this stuff is happening incredibly quickly. This technology is incredibly powerful. We don't know how to make it safe. We're not sure we're going to be able to control it. I would love to slow down if I could. And Dario has said this. Sam Altman has said it in certain ways. Demis Hassabis has said it. Elon Musk has said it. But they all both say, and I think express and sort of feel, that they can't stop individually. Because if I'm Dario and I stop, that's not going to stop Sam. It's not going to stop Demis. It's not going to stop Elon. They're going to keep going. And so all I'm doing is sort of taking myself out of the race. Every one of them says that and feels that. But these are smart guys. When they want to make deals, they can make deals. If you can get, the Saudis to subsidize through SoftBank and President Trump $500 million to build a giant data center in the Middle East, these are complicated deals. They can probably work out a deal with each other in how they can cooperate to not race towards superintelligence. So we proposed a mechanism, which is what's called an assurance contract, which says, I will stop racing if everybody else agrees to stop racing. So let's sign something that says, if all 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever many AI companies sign the same contract that says, we're going to stop racing if everybody else does, then until everybody signs, we can keep racing. But if everybody signs, then we've agreed to stop. This is called an assurance contract. And the beauty of this is that nobody has to stop by themselves, right? They only stop all together. And we have created lots of ways to coordinate with each other as human beings. And I really think if we put our mind to this one, we could do it. Smart guys. It doesn't come into effect until, enough people have signed on. Maybe that's everybody. Maybe it's, 5 out of 7 or something. But the game theory of it changes, because If you just say, I'm going to stop individually, and nobody else is stopping, then you lose. If you say, I'm going to stop when everybody else stops, that's a deal that makes sense for everybody to sign if they would really like to stop. It makes sense for everybody to sign one by one individually because nobody's at a disadvantage until the contract actually kicks in, and then nobody's at a disadvantage because they're all in the same place. They've all agreed to stop and they're all operating under the same rules. So at no point is anyone at a disadvantage.
Can you explain to our viewers your better path framework?
So the first thing to understanding a better path is understanding the path that we're on. And there's an idea that AI development is just one thing, that there's the AI that we have now, which is sort of these language models that are quite general and good at some things and not good at others, and that the path forward is to make them just more and more powerful until they can replace humans at doing all of the things that we do, and then after that, superintelligence. That's the path that the companies are laying out, and that's what they're pursuing. And it is specifically designed to do the whole thing that humans do and slot the human out and slot the AI system in instead. I think this is a bad goal. The goal of developing AI systems specifically to simulate and replace humans just isn't a good goal. It's a goal that you can understand from an economic perspective because there's a big prize if you can replace human labor with AI labor and take the money for yourself. That's a giant amount of money. So we can understand why the companies are doing it and why they're selling that to investors. But it isn't a good goal for humanity, right? Nobody wants to be replaced with an AI system, basically. So we have to ask, is that the only path that we can be on? Is it the only way to get the fruits of this powerful technology is to build human replacements? And I think the answer is no. So what is the alternative?
Let's do something to stop that race.
The first thing you have to do is say, this is a bad path that we're on. We should not be building human replacements. We should not be building uncontrollable AI systems. We should not be racing towards superintelligent systems that we're not going to be able to control and that will replace humans and then humanity. This is a crazy thing to be doing. And it's kind of astonishing that we've allowed the companies to get away with even having this as a goal. Like, why is it okay to even say we're building smarter than human AI systems because we want to replace everybody and their jobs and then give over the power of humanity to the AI systems instead? This is ludicrous, but this is where we are. So the first thing is to say, that's not okay. That is not a reasonable goal. We are not going to do that. We're going to do something else in AI development. And we'll put in the sort of regulations and governance structures that say you can do this and not this, where the second thing is the runaway to superintelligence. So then the question is, what do we do instead, right? How can we use the power of AI to actually solve the problems that we want to solve? And there I think the news is good because there are lots of ways that AI can be used that isn't a human replacement. We've got 100,000 years of experience with what it means to build tools that allow humans to do things better and do things they couldn't do before, rather than we don't use our hands to move giant things much anymore. We use powerful machines. We don't calculate 7-digit number multiplication in our head anymore, or even on paper. We have machines to do it for us. So we've built technologies in our service, things that help people do what they want better and faster and do things that they couldn't do before. And we can build AI tools. So the first thing to think of is, how do we build AI tools that empower people to do things they otherwise couldn't do, rather than AI replacements that we slot in instead of people? That's the very first thing. If you just shift your thinking in that way, it leads to a lot of other implications for how we should develop AI.
Was this paper driven more by hope or fear?
Obviously both. I think the fear is the default path that we're on, is the one that we will continue on, and all of the clearly foreseeable consequences of that path will come to be manifest. The hope is that it doesn't have to be that way. So there's this feeling that people have of inevitability, like technologies just inevitably roll along and advance themselves. This is not true. So the development of these powerful AI systems, the race towards superintelligence, costs trillions of dollars. And some of the smartest people on Earth all of their time and mental effort trying to make this thing happen. It is not happening by itself. It is happening because people are choosing to devote all of those resources to that path. And when something is incredibly hard to do and requires huge effort and huge expense, it is not inevitable. You can direct those, or you can either just stop doing that, or you can direct all of that effort towards something else. And so the optimistic side, the hope, is that this is not in fact inevitable, that despite the incentives that are driving the development in that direction, that the strong preference that the rest of us have, that the other sort of 8 billion people on Earth have to have technologies that serve them and that don't replace them and that actually solve their problems, that pressure can redirect course. So I think there's a depressing side, which is that the biggest companies on Earth, supported very, very directly by the US government, are doing this with huge financial incentive, right? That's a powerful set of forces. On the other hand, if everyone that is threatened by this at all gets together and pushes back, that's everyone else in the world, literally. And that is also very powerful. So that gives me the hope and the optimistic side. And what I really wanted to do here is to say, the goal is not just to stop AI progress or stop something. The goal is to say, what do we actually want instead? How can we switch tracks instead of trying to stop the train?
Did you write this paper more as a scientist or citizen worried about the future of humans?
Well, both. I mean, I think the concern in particular for what happens with superintelligence, I think comes, well, with many things, comes out of the scientific side. So there's a prediction aspect of saying, here's what we're doing. Here are the almost inevitable consequences from the game theory, from the physics, from the information theory of what is going to happen if we go down that path. So there's a predictive element that says this is not a good direction to be going. Then there's the preference side and the sort of, as a concerned citizen, as a human, what do we do instead? And that has to do with both a technical piece, like how technically can we avoid going down this path? How can we choose to stop doing this and do the other thing? And there's also just a human piece of what is it that we actually want as humans? Like, what do we want from our technologies? What does it mean to have a good future for humanity? Those are questions that are not just my questions, they should be everybody's questions. And I see it as my goal to sort of understand what, to some degree that I can, what people in general want and what we can put together as a different technological trajectory to go more for what is going to benefit the most people.
I know some AI leaders who treat AGI almost like a religion.
I think there are very religious aspects to the way people are thinking about it because, what is the goal here? To build something that is all-knowing and all-powerful? Like how is that not a religion? And that there's a fundamental sort of diminishment of humanity. Like, humans are very flawed things, right? We are dumb and make mistakes and get angry at each other and don't always cooperate and everything. Lots of flaws. But somehow we have gone from, scrabbling around, hunting and gathering to a world-spanning civilization that has these amazing technologies that can travel to other planets occasionally, that has computation systems, that has unbelievably low levels of violence compared to what we had, hundreds or thousands of years ago, even if it still comes out sometimes. We have a standard of living that puts, the typical Western person more materially wealthy than kings were, 1,000 years ago. So we've managed all of these things, and I think there's so much more that humanity can manage if we allow ourselves, if we give ourselves the right tools, if we have continue our social advancement, continue the advancement of our civilization and our ideals. But instead, it feels like there's this ideology that humans aren't that great. So let's make something better. Let's make this AI systems that are smarter than us and somehow wiser than us and more knowing than us, and basically hand over the reins of civilization to them, and they'll make everything better for us. And I think this is probably misguided. It's not impossible that this could turn out that they could in fact be smarter and wiser than us and things go well. But I think it's both unlikely, and I think it's sort of a betrayal of humanity. Like we have done incredibly well. We could do incredible things. We're not necessarily going to do there are lots of things that are pretty off with the way that humanity is operating right now, but those are problems that we could solve. And so I would rather see these trillions of dollars and all these incredible minds going into how can we actually make humanity the best it can possibly be. How can we do that with AI? Like, are there ways that AI can help us, know things better, find truth better, work with each other better, cooperate with each other better, build better institutions? How can the AI tools actually uplift humanity rather than how do we figure out how to replace our judgment, our thinking with machine systems and then let them do all the work for us? Like, this just seems like an anti-human goal, and I'm pro-human.
Moving away strictly to your paper, you proposed new AGI definition, right?
The way that I like to think about AGI as autonomous general intelligence, the positive, one of the nice things about that framework of thinking it as a sort of combination of those three terms of autonomy, generality, and intelligence is that you can easily see, well, we can just build AI systems that don't combine all three of those things, and then it's a different thing. So there isn't one path which is like not quite AGI and then almost AGI and then AGI and then more than AGI. Like, that is not the only path we can choose. We can choose all sorts of combinations of AI capabilities to do the things that we want. So we can have, for example, very powerful special purpose AI tools that do things like scientific discovery, that do things like powerful mathematics, that do even programming. We have programming tools already. But it doesn't mean that all of those things have to have a whole lot of autonomy or agency to do the things that they want. There's no reason, if you're doing biology research and doing protein folding, that system has to be able to also drive a car, or that your autonomous vehicle needs to be able to do philosophy, or that the thing that you're using to solve Einstein's equations needs to flirt with your children. There's no reason to combine all of these into one giant system. That's not what we do with any other information technology, right? We've got our phone full of apps, and each one of them does something. Instead, AI is like, this is the do everything app. Click here, and it just does all the things. That's a weird direction to take software development, and there's no reason to do it in that direction. So the AGI framework is useful for saying there isn't just the spectrum from not AGI to post-AGI, but rather there are lots of different directions that we can go. And once we start thinking about what do we want the system to actually do, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here, then it starts to feel very different.
Is that really what we need from AI, right?
Right. So we can build AI agents where the AI systems have the goals and the plans and sort of make things happen, and whatever they're trying to get done is the thing that happens in the world. Or we can try to enhance human agency, where we decide what we want to have happen, and we have tools that help us do that. That's what we've done with all our previous technology. Now, the way that AI is being developed now, people have noticed that it's mostly a tool, and they really, really want it to be an agent because there's more profit to be made in agents. They can replace more things. There are things that agents can do that tools can't, because the agents can do it all by themselves without human intervention. So if you want to write a big program, there are some different paths you can go down. One is something that you're the programmer and the AI system sort of helps you out. Or the other one is the AI system is the programmer and you tell it sort of what to program and it goes away and does a bunch of programming. And this is what people are leaning into a lot now. They want the AI system to do all of the stuff itself and then just report back, yes, I'm done, here's the product. And that can be very useful in certain ways, but when the more we put the agency into the AI systems, the less of it sits in us, right? So the more the AI system is making decisions, the less we're making decisions. And so I think we have to be very careful as we build systems that are very autonomous, that can do all of these things on their own, and have all the other human capabilities, the intelligence and the generality. What is the purpose of us anymore, right? If the system does it all. Now, if you build something that's autonomous, but isn't that smart, or isn't that general, then it's something that we can still control. Like autonomous vehicles, they're not going to take over the world. They might put some Uber drivers out of work, and that is like an economic displacement problem that we have to think about. But there isn't some giant risk to society from things that are just autonomous. It's that triple combination that's the problem.
Is autonomous AI more dangerous than highly intelligent AI?
I would say so. So it depends how exactly. So a lot of people think of as intelligence as, lump all these things together, which is why I think it's useful to separate them. But if you have a system that is highly intelligent, like a calculator is in some sense very intelligent in that the particular thing that it does extraordinarily well and accurately and fast. So in that sense, a calculator is very intelligent, but absolutely non-threatening, right? Now, when you think of something a little bit more general than a calculator, then it starts to exhibit more of those potentially dangerous qualities. So if you have an AI system that can design new viruses, right? It can be very specific and only designs new viruses. It can be not that autonomous in that it really requires the human oversight, to tell it to design a virus. But it can still be pretty dangerous, because if you've got a very powerful tool in the wrong hands, that is a very dangerous thing. But I think it's important to separate the kind of danger that we've always had. We've always had powerful tools. We've always had bad people. And it's a problem to figure out how to manage the bad people having powerful tools. But it's one we've been with for a long time. Building something that is fundamentally a sort of being rather than a tool, an agent rather than a tool that has its own goals and purposes, that is something we don't have a lot of experience with. We have sort of some uncontrollable systems, and we've got like animals and so on, but and we're used to not controlling those necessarily, but they're also only so powerful, right? If you're in the cage with a lion, it's very scary, but otherwise lions are just not that big of a threat to humanity because they're just not that powerful compared to us. But if we absolutely had to control, lions, because if lions had nuclear weapons, that would be a different question. Like, we don't know how to get lions exactly to do what we want. Even the most trained lions can turn on their trainers. So I think it is a very different thing to build AI systems that are autonomous agents rather than tools. And as we make very powerful, capable autonomous agents, we have to ask ourselves, A, is that the right direction? And B, if we do it, are we going to keep control of those things?
What does your Metaculus platform currently predict about the timeline for AGI?
Yeah, interestingly, it's Metaculus's prediction has stayed pretty constant over the last several years, that we will have. So there are different definitions of AGI, and it's very contentious. What is the right thing to predict? But according to the way that the prediction is made on Metaculus, it's sort of in the next few years that we're likely to have it in the sort of weak form, and maybe a couple of years after that in a very strong form. So
maybe AGI is an ideology more than technology, right?
I think it is in some sense an ideology, but that ideology is driving a technology. So I think it didn't have to be this way. Like I do think that there's another universe very much like ours in which people did not get attached to the idea of AGI and let's replicate all of the things that humans do and sort of race to build something that is super intelligent. But they just said, oh, look, we can do this thing called machine learning, where instead of having to explicitly program exactly what the system does, we instead figure out the goal and the system learns how to do that thing. It's just a different way of writing a program to do machine learning instead of explicitly programming all the steps. And let's create really, strong machine learning systems and have them be tools that do stuff that was very, very hard to program explicitly, like protein folding. We never figured out how to do that. But look, the machine learning thing can do it from DeepMind. I think there's a world in which that was the way people thought about AI, and that we built lots of AI tools. And there were some people out on the side saying like, hey, we should build AI that does everything instead of humans. And the people were like, yeah, whatever. In the same way that right now, there are off people saying like, oh, we should do genetic engineering to make like superhumans physically, superhumans mentally. We should build like the Uberman with genetic engineering. Like those people are out there, but everybody pays them no attention because like, we don't want that. We don't want to go build superhuman with genetic engineering. So we could have a world in which that was the way that people look at AGI and superintelligence. We're not in that world.
Do you see any signs of an AI bubble?
An AI bubble, it's an interesting question because I think there are people who think we're in an AI bubble because AI is basically bullshit. It's all hype, and the AI systems really aren't capable of being that powerful and so on. This is not true.
That's not true.
There is, I think, a potential that there is a bubble because of trust. So the way that AI systems will make the huge amounts of money that they have been promising to their investors is if they can substitute for huge amounts of human labor. Now, there are various barriers to substituting for huge amounts of human labor. One of them is sort of raw capability. They have to be smart enough to do all the things. Another one is sort of social barriers and regulatory barriers and things. And a third one is trust. So if I'm going to replace my human workers with AI systems, I got to be able to trust that those AI systems are actually going to do the right thing, and they're going to follow the rules and the laws. They're not going to get me in trouble and so on. And I think that it's possible that because we're designing these AI systems in a way that is so focused on sort of raw capability, getting the highest numbers on those capability benchmarks, and not focused on building things you can actually rely on, that are actually reliable, trustworthy, secure, safe, that there's going to be a big barrier between when the systems in principle are like capable of doing all these things and when they can actually be used in the economy. And if that gap gets big enough, that trust gap gets big enough, then the money might run out. So if you're burning through huge amounts of money, which many of these companies are, and there's a long delay between when you have the capability and when you can actually make huge amounts of money on it, you might run out of money. That's not because the technology is bullshit, but it is because you've chosen the wrong direction to develop it in a way that is not actually making what people need.
I remember my interview with John Hopfield. His work was recognized in 2024 by Nobel Committee work on AI. I asked him, do you regret something? If you could turn back time, would you do this? I remember his answer, just one thing, that neural network development took place within computer sciences rather than biological sciences. For decades, computer sciences, not biological sciences, have looked at how the human brain works. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I think there's some interesting scientific questions there, and then there are some social questions too. So I think there's an interesting sort of fact that when we create biological systems, if we create a new drug or a new medical procedure or something, those are very, very tightly regulated fields. So in biology and in medicine and things that have to do with living beings, we have a very different attitude because we sort of understand that we're tinkering with something that's sort of almost sacred. Like there's a real respect for biological systems, and there's a real obvious sense in which when you screw something up, you're doing real harm to something that feels it. And so we've got a very sophisticated regulatory system and systems of ethics and so on when it comes to biological systems. All of that is largely absent when we go to computational systems, where we have this history of You just kind of throw stuff together. It's just software. It doesn't really affect anybody exactly. There's basically no regulation. It's a free-for-all. You just throw it up there and like it kind of anything goes. And the fact that AI, this incredibly powerful new technology that is whose goal is to, replace human thinking and replace humans as decision makers and agents and so on, came out of the totally unregulated anything goes software industry rather than the biology side, means that it's being treated very, very differently, right? As I said before, if you propose, I want to use genetic engineering to make a set of people that are super duper smart, because that's really valuable. If we have super duper smart people, we can cure cancer, we can be more productive, we can do all of these things. So I'm going to go do genetic engineering to make super duper smart people. The regulatory agents are going to say, like, no, you are not. The ethical boards are going to say, no, you are not. The general population is going to say, no, you are not going to do that. At least not with like a lot more conversation. This is not just like a normal thing to do, to go build superhuman brains, even if they're useful, even if they're economically valuable, even if they could cure cancer. We just don't do that.
This is dead end for our race, right?
Well, there are different ways. We just treat it very differently. Like whether that's good or not, like it's very, very different, right? Like we would not be having this conversation in the same way if it was with human brains. Again, there's maybe another universe where all these giant companies are racing to build the most superhuman humans with genetic engineering. That's not the universe we're in, but there probably is one out there where there's like 10 giant companies that are racing to build the most superhuman people with their genetic engineering.
People, right?
Upgraded people that are like super intelligent people, because they're all saying like, we're going to cure cancer before the other guys do with our superhumans. That's just a very different universe than the one we're in. So why we treat one way in our universe and the other a totally different way, or vice versa in the other universe, I don't know. It's a complicated question. But it is a very double standard, and it is interesting to imagine how things would be different if AI were developed, more like biological systems and less like apps.
Thank you very much for your time.